Pessoal, esse é mais um episódio na verdade, o primeiro episódio desse podcast que vai tratar sobre música, uma produção do Luzeiro Estúdio. Today, I have the honor to interview one of the greatest pianists I have ever met, Mr. Harold Danko. He was my professor at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester. And he is not only a fantastic piano player, but a wonderful composer and an amazing jazz educator. So, Harold, thank you so much for being here with me this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you after all this time.
Yes, almost 10 years. No.
Is it really? Wow. Okay.
Almost. Yeah, time flies.
Crazy.
And Harold, before, when I was planning this interview, I thought that it would be really easy to interview you because you have done so many things. So I just had to pick up some areas and ask you a question. But that's exactly the problem, because you have done so many things that I found it extremely difficult to pick up an area of your expertise to ask you about. So after a long period of after thinking a lot about that, I would like to give to my listeners the opportunity to hear from you the things you have learned, you have taught me at Eastman, because it was a life-changing experience to be your student. I was recently in New Orleans, like 1 month ago. I went there to make a record with Doug Stone. Of course.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a project with music, my music, his music, and still have one piece of Quinn Sternberg, a bass player. So, and we are talking about how wonderful was that period at Eastman and how influential you are to musicians, not only to piano players, but to everybody. So I would like to ask you my first question that concerns with learning process. So I think that your generation has a great advantage over our generation, my generation, because you didn't have internet when we were learning. Yeah. So I remember you speaking to us how anxious everybody was waiting for a release of somebody's disc, so people would dig into that disc in order to learn, really learn the tunes and not learning the tunes, but listening to the drum, how the drums is playing, how the bass is playing. So what can you tell me about this kind of learning and the importance of tradition to young musicians?
Well, I think what I was also describing there was just the communal aspect of how my generation learned jazz. It was, we weren't there, we had the recordings, of course, and we got together, and I would maybe get together with a drummer and listen to the record, and we go, wow, we didn't know what it was. We're just in awe of what was going on in these records. And so the idea of everything being there at once, as it is now on the internet and with everything, with all the platforms available for music, we used to wait for the next record, say, and I used to talk about and still do talk about what the next Blue Note record is, what Joe Henderson is doing, what the next Miles Davis record is. So my chronology, without even thinking of it, is pretty accurate from the 60s and 70s. What went on and what was released before, and who that person was playing with, in addition to, playing with Miles Davis or something. And so it was an incredible experience, but we had to acquire and we had to pay for things too. And I think that's the difference now. I taught a student for a while this summer and asked him about records and asked him about CDs. There was nothing, and realized in talking to him that he had not paid for a piece of music or a recording in his life. And it's a young life yet. But I don't know if there's any expectation that he would exchange his money for something music. So the value that we had on music, I think, was very high, because some of the Blue Note records were expensive. And so, I'd wait for my friend to get it, and I would get the record that was maybe in the $2 bin, and so then, but they were all good, So I think there's an expectation now that everything is given to you, everything is available, and that's a bit sad in a way, because I still, if you look around my room, I won't show you my room, I've got my LPs, I've got my music, and then it's like, I don't want to throw it away. I've moved 3 or 4 times. And the last time when I retired, I said, oh, geez, I got to get rid of some stuff. So I sold a lot of records to the Bop Shop, if you remember the Bop Shop.
Yes.
He bought some records. And then I couldn't get rid of, I don't know, 700 still, and then every once in a while I'll miss something. I say, oh, I think I gave that to the Bop Shop. So there's every item. I was just looking through some stuff because I've been to Brazil 3 times. So I prepared for this. I said, oh, when did I go to Brazil? So I looked through some papers in my basement, in the filing cabinet. It's an incredible treasure of, like, my Liza Minnelli itineraries, my Gerry Mulligan itineraries, where I was in these days. And it's gonna, I don't know, it's hard for me to throw away, because the experience is tangible. And I think that the tangible experience of a record, the tangible experience of a communal experience of the new record, and then trying to do it. Like what I always say, when we were in Ohio, we tried to get these things from the record. It wasn't very accurate. And that's why I always encourage the student. I don't care if it's the, perfect, what you're transcribing, but try to hear it, try to whistle it, try to sing it back. And then if you can put it on paper, that's good too. But that process from the recordings, even early on, of Louis Armstrong, that got out to the Chicago people, and then they heard this. So the recordings have made this music go on. And it's so accessible. There must be some good way to exploit it. It's up to another generation.
Yes,
I don't want to be negative about what but it is a lot to take in.
No, neither do I. I'm just saying that I feel that sometimes everything is so accessible to students that they learned that in a superficial way. Sometimes I feel, instead of going deeper into one thing and really learn that thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and when you try on your own, Bill Dobbins lived in Ohio, about 40 miles from me. I didn't know him in those days, but already his transcriptions were legend. So we would try to get something, something from a Chick Corea or whatever, and then you say, well, that guy Dobbins, I think his would be more accurate. But it doesn't matter, because we tried ourselves, and I know myself, oh yeah, I missed that chord, I didn't get that. Oh, okay, now I get it. But I got 90, 80%, 90%. And then you can clean up the rest. I remember trying to transcribe Clifford Brown, and I would miss half steps, whole steps, and then I'd listen to it some months later, my ears grew. So, oh, well, how did I miss that? So, but you don't, the step-by-step process has to be there, unless you're some genius. I don't know.
Yes, for sure. And I like very much the way you approach jazz. The space, I remember you always talked to me about space, either for comping or for soloing. And I remember one of your phrases is that we do not learn to improvise, we improvise to learn. You remember?
Yeah.
What can you tell me about this?
That was my best sentence, I think, when I was interviewed a long time ago by a New York paper, and I said that in a response to a question, and then that became the title of the article, kind of. And I said, wow, I said that, you know. But it's something that you don't learn to improvise, you know. I mean, it's like in life, in learning a language, you try. A child tries, and then you get corrected. I recently gave a speech at my university that I graduated from, Youngstown University, and I called it the wrong notes, you know. And I was just trying to encourage the graduates. I said, I'm a specialist in wrong notes, but you know, that's what you do. You play the wrong notes, and then maybe you get some of the right notes. So, but if it's just going to be that way, the process is something that you have to learn to enjoy. And that's something I said too, that I never enjoyed practicing until I heard a phrase by this man named Jerry Rice, who's now famous for pouring in the Super Bowl ads. He's a famous football player, but he talked about enjoying the practice as much as you enjoy the playing. And I just like, and that's why he's one of the greats of all time. He established all these records in football, and he said it was about doing it. And I said, wow, I don't enjoy practicing because it hurts my ego when I make, you know, all these mistakes. And I said, no, that's part of the process. If you don't do that, another student reminded me of something I said. I said, anything worth doing is worth doing badly. So that's another one of my life affirming statements.
But these statements are really good. And also concerning the learning process as well as the educational process. I remember you used to give us these lead sheets, remember, staircase.
From keyboard, yeah.
Yes, and each one of them treats about a specific matter. Composing related to composition or to performances. What can you tell me about these publications?
Well,
and can you tell specifically about this staircase one?
Well, staircase had the giant steps. I was trying to write a song for Lee Konitz. I was always, as a composer, taking my music around when I would do recordings, hoping that I would get on, you know, get the people to play them. So Lee Konitz I played with a long time, and there was a rehearsal of Chet Baker and Lee Konitz playing giant steps, which I wish I had a cassette of. I would be valuable, and but I don't. But the approach, Chet had a very melodic approach to giant steps and played around the melody, and Lee played the way Lee plays with some intervals, and he was just looking at the changes and playing, reacting to it. So I wrote a tune that I thought was, you know, kind of capturing that element of Lee's playing. And when he read it, you know, it wasn't comfortable for him to read, you know, something like that. But eventually, after about 3 years, I think I got him to record it in Italy. And I was very proud of that, because it was a way of playing giant steps slower because there would be eighth notes, da ba da ba 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 da, you know. So instead of playing half notes, da, and we have to play it fast. That was the way you could, the harmonies could go slower, and that was the point of it. And so, yeah, I've had fun with that tune, and then also trying to play that way once the solo starts, to play very intervalistically. And I'm a big fan of Eddie Harris, and you know, he wrote Freedom Jazz Dance, but he did so much more than that. But there was an intervalistic way that he played that really, it fits with the hand, because we can get fourths, we can get 2/4 right away, we can spread out. So there's a certain way of the piano, the way of your hands, that can fit some of these things that might not be as accessible on a horn or trumpet. So, but Eddie Harris found a way to do it on the saxophone, of course. So
awesome. And what about the set of publications that you did with these articles?
Well, I did I think about 30 articles. It was a wonderful period where it was actually Fred Hirsch that recommended me, because Fred had written for the publication, and then he got very busy, you know, being Fred Hirsch and being whatever. So he was gracious enough to tell Keyboard about me. And I had just moved to Rochester. And so I said, well, this is a good opportunity to get my teaching, you know, each little, like a lesson or something in a publication. And it went on for almost 5 years. So it was like, you know, I think 10 times a year or so, something like that. So there was more than 30 articles, I believe. And it was a good chance to say, okay, what am I going to talk about? And those would become like a lesson format in a way.
Is it possible to find the whole set?
I have it somewhere. I mean, I have PDFs. I don't think it's available in the Keyboard Magazine archive. It could be, but you know, I'm very backward with, people have done nice things for me, make me PDFs, you know, and then it sits somewhere. When I got out of Eastman, they gave me a hard drive. I have a hard drive with my Eastman 19 years, I think. So, but I haven't looked at it since.
Oh, no.
But it's there somewhere, yeah. I have hard copies of many things too, which I'm very happy to send to people.
I have some of them. I don't have the 30 articles, so that's why I'm asking. I think it's really valuable to have these things, because they direct us straight to what has to be learned.
Thank you. Yeah, I was proud of those, and I've written for some other publications, but that was a real series where you know, it's like, okay, what's next? And sometimes I was able to follow up. I think I did one on riffs and things like that, and I was able to follow through. And you know, have a part 2, part 3. So that was nice.
And do you remember when we were in Rochester, prior to my entrance at Eastman, I told you that I had a difficult to organize my study, my jazz study, because I come from a classical background.
Mm-hmm.
So in this way, I think classical music is easier to organize the path to study. So I can like pick up a piece from every period of time, like a Baroque, classical, romantic, and
Sure.
from there. But jazz is not like this, because a single piece you can play in several ways, right? So that's why
Yes.
I think these articles so helpful to help people to focus on what has to be learned.
That's important for, you know, to understand about jazz, and my goal, I don't know if it was a goal, but something that I'm always trying to emphasize is there's a methodology to technique on classical music, and there's maybe a methodology of how to teach the various periods. And there's less of that in jazz. And so I think you have to come to really respect methodology. And that was what I was trying to always acquire, the methodology and pass the methodology, so that people would understand, okay, what can I do next? What is the next thing I can do? Because there's so much. And that a lot of times it's a personality thing. A person will want to go with a certain teacher because of the, you know, the high level of that. And maybe the person is not really a teacher. There's never thought about another person trying to play the piano, you know, and I've thought a lot about that. So I have to give myself some credit, because you know, there's been lots and lots of students, and I try to really see what's in front of my face, you know, and like, okay, this person, good left hand, needs work here, you know, and that was what I try to do all the time. And there's no substitute for that when you have some kind of mentor. And I was fortunate, I had a man named Gene Rush, who I found when I was 15. And he was the one, along with my brothers, I had brothers that played saxophone. So, but they were early inspirations for me to learn this music. But Gene gave me like kind of step by step, okay, next lesson, okay, you know, and that's very important.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And this subject leads me to another question, which is related to this learning process and composition. Because I remember you saying that if you want to learn something, write a tune about what you're studying, right?
Yeah.
And can you tell a little bit about this compositional process of yours?
Okay. I love to talk about this because in the last few years, I've been concentrating on my own music, and that's what I like to play. And when I look at some early things that I wrote in the 1960s when I was in college, I would call them maybe modal tunes. They would stay in a certain mode, or have certain progressions that were very much in a key and then go into another key. And so those I can still play that music because I think I've gotten better in my improvising in both the modal ways or the, you know, the easy progressions as I went on and try to write tunes that were maybe challenging. I think my composer head, I used to talk about composer head, arranger head, and blower head, or, you know, improviser head. My composer head was way in advance of my improviser head. And that was because I was listening early on to Stravinsky, Bartok, Berg. You know, I loved everything new. Well, it wasn't new, it's 20th, say everything from that part of the 20th century. And I'm still now trying to cope with that language. My last two recorded efforts have been in the realm of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, which I've been stuck on for 50 years now. But it's always rewarding to me because I'm trying to find what can I use as an improviser? What you know, I can just lay on the floor and go, that's amazing music, which I do now and then. But sometimes with particularly with the Rite of Spring, I felt there's things there that maybe I can get next to because some of them appeared in my writing in some subtle way, very intuitive. Oh, that's Stravinsky, you know, or that's this or that. And so, you know, Wayne Shorter was a real influence as far as jazz composers, and Joe Henderson, you know, a lot of people in that way of like, what are they writing, and how am I able to extend that in the improvisation? So you want to have the improvisation not just reflect what you practice, you know, and that's the thing I think, to resort to certain standards that everybody, you know, that knows, and then, oh yeah, this is my new stuff on this. And I mean, that's valuable, but that's not to me like as artistic as it could be. So if a composition speaks to you, whether it's one of your own or whether it's Wayne Shorter or whoever it might be, if you get inside that composition, that's what I'm always trying to say. It's like, I don't try to play outside. I try to play very, very inside. But if the piece starts pretty wild, that inside that piece is going to be pretty wild. And then if it's very beautiful, melodic, then I'm going to try to keep that for 7 minutes or however long my improvisation is. And then when I go to something else, oh, that gives me a new frame. And now I work with this. And so I've composed enough songs that I in my repertoire, I can kind of satisfy my needs of like, oh, now I want to play something pretty. Okay, I got something. And I learned some of that from Gerry Mulligan, who I went on tour with in the 80s. And Gerry liked to play his own music. And he would very much, sit down and think, what are the sets going to be? And I'm thinking, well, it's one of your tunes, whatever, I'm just like the piano player. But he put a lot of thought into what the programming would be and how his own music could be a program. And that was very important for me to learn. It's like, okay, if I value my own compositions, then I have to see where they could fit in a program, in a presentation. And then is it better to get somebody else's composition? Would it be better to play a standard, or would it be better to play, something from Charlie Parker? Whatever captures that moment. So I think when you're an evolving artist, in whatever way you think you might be an artist, you have to include that because you've got to present it. It's wonderful to just do it for yourself, but the other idea is the presentation, and hopefully we'll get back to live audiences soon, because that's very important. That sure. Feedback.
For sure. And about that recording you made, it's available on Spotify, right? The name is Staple. I forgot the name of the disc.
Oh, the latest one?
Yeah.
It's called Spring Garden.
Spring Garden, yeah, sorry. I was listening to that, and I thought it was amazing, the way you deal with rhythmic contrasts, modality, and tonality. It's very present, these concepts over there. Sometimes I feel some Brazilian grooves.
Oh yeah, I can't help myself.
Yeah,
I did another recording there since then called Right Notes, spelled R-I-T-E, Right Notes, because there were another 7 tunes that I developed out of the Rite of Spring in a certain way and other influences. But I said, boy, when am I going to get out of 1912, and so my first thing was I think I told you I've been listening to Edu Lobo, his music, because the Brazilian music speaks to me so much since in the 60s. I think when I first heard Edu Lobo on Sergio Mendes, and then I heard him on another record, and I said, these tunes are really good. And so I followed him, and then I met him in 1979, and we corresponded for a while. And we lost touch. I know he's still alive, but it would be wonderful to have a contact with him again, because it was somebody that I recognized as a composer that really writes things that are different and beautiful and something that's there. So I forgot the question even. I get to talking about Brazilian music.
No, that was my next question. As an American jazz player, how do you see the Brazilian music? I remember you saying about basketball and football, these analogies
Oh
that
yeah.
I say all the time to students. But what is how do you see Brazilian music?
I I see it. I mean, for personal enjoyment, I listen to a lot of Brazilian music, and I get something because I don't understand the language, but I think I get the emotion, you know. And I remember being in Sao Paulo, and there was a drummer there named Lilian Carmona, and I went to her house and she played some Elis Regina, and I started to cry. And she was like, I'm a brother, kind of, you know. I said, I don't know what the song is about, but I get something. And I think there's something so deep about the Brazilian way of rhythm, and then the long melodies that are made fresh by the rhythms all the time. It never this way. And that thing with the basketball and the football up in the air, that's from a Brazilian pianist. I forgot his name in New York that I knew. He used to say that. But you know, I had experience in New York too of playing with Edson Machado, and you know, famous drummer from the early Brazilian, from the bossa nova, and there were some times when I played with him where I have no idea what was going on, but it felt great, and I try to get that feeling. And I, you know, when I listen to that music, it has the cousin of the jazz feel, the upbeat feel of jazz, and that sort of music has really influenced me in some ways. And I'm glad that you can hear it because you're from Brazil. So if you hear it, then maybe I'm not just fooling myself.
Oh, not at all, not at all. Yeah, and when you say that your experience with Lee Konitz, Gerry Mulligan, you played also with Ted Jones, Mel Lewis. There is a quartet that you recorded, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What were the challenges to play with these guys? Because as you mentioned, each one of them had its own approach to jazz, right?
Yes.
And you as a pianist, you have your own vision of how music has to be approached. And I imagine that some adaptations had to be made. What can you tell me about this?
Well, first of all, they were
Challenges.
heroes to me from my records. And, you know, when I first went out with Woody Herman and learned to play, you know, I was just looking at that itinerary, one place after another. And you have to come up to a level of playing these concerts for Woody Herman. And that was, you know, it's not being what I might do if Miles Davis called me, which he never did. So you learn to do that. And then I really loved that experience. And then Chet Baker was shortly after that, which was a great experience because I don't know if I was ready for it, but he was accepting of what I did. And I just, you know, loved to be there when he was playing. And it's not a regret. I'd hate to use regret, but I wish I would have gotten a chance to go to Brazil with Chet Baker. That would have been an amazing tour. Because I know he was very much a hero there for people, but it would have been great to be able to do that. But I didn't get to do that with Chet. So, but with Lee Konitz, yeah, it was totally different. And a lot of these things occurred as I was a freelance musician. And so I was, the other thing with seeing my itineraries and seeing what I did night to night, wow, then you had to make an adjustment to play with another person the next night. But I was just so happy to be there. And also, I think I understood that my job was to try to make that person sound good in the way that I maybe could. And it wasn't about me so much as it was the band. With Thad Jones, he was the most accepting of whatever I did, I feel. And I think I grew a lot in my own confidence with Thad Jones. And that was good because I did get a chance to play with Chet Baker again for the Tokyo concert and some other things in 1988, I think it's 1987. So I did get a chance after my other experiences to go back with Chet. And that was really good because Chet was very accepting of me and very, very, very nice to me, and always was. But I think I grew in the meantime. And then I was able to bring that to his music, the fact that I had grown. And sometimes I surprised myself because, you know, with Gerry Mulligan, for instance, you know, I felt his music was, you know, very Gerry Mulligan, of course. But I'll hear myself with him and I say, oh, I never heard myself play like that. So it brought out something different in me. And with Lee Konitz, that was always the case. Well, sometimes, except if I felt I couldn't play at all, because Lee would play something, I'd say, oh, I should be transcribing his solo that I just heard, you know, rather than playing a solo myself. And similar with Thad Jones, but that experience day to day and getting to know these people as human beings and saying, wow, it's not just about the music. These guys were guys that left messages on my answering machine, you know, like saying, hey, can you do this gig? And oh, wow, I got a gig with a singer that night. What can I do? You know, so then I have to make an administrative decision, you know, or how much does it pay? So I sometimes brag to people. I said, I not only played with these people actually paid me to play with them. It's unbelievable.
Amazing. Yeah, life-changing experience, I imagine.
Yes, yeah.
For sure. And another thing I would like you to hear from you. Can you tell me a little bit of 1959, that year in the history of jazz?
Yes. I think it was the year, that I first heard Milestones on a stereo, on a big stereo system of 4 speakers with my brother. And 1959 was a year I was 12 years old. And they talk about 1959 as a year that changed. Ornette Coleman, you know, very important things. I think Dave Brubeck, Time Out, Kind of Blue, Mingus, Aham. I think there were very important things. So that was right where I was 12 years, right before puberty, you know, and I'm listening to this stuff along with like what, you know, let's not talk about puberty, but we know what's happening when you're a young teenage boy. And so, but that was the other thing that was happening is like the 1959, 1960 was an important time. And I was going out to hear live music. My brother was taking me to hear big bands in the early 60s in an amusement park. I saw Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Duke Ellington, Count Basie. You know, it was crazy to just experience that and see the people and see, oh yeah, the Maynard Ferguson band was the youngest guys. And they were like all kind of raggedy, you know, Count Basie's men were just great and impeccable. And Maynard's band was more like these young guys. I said, oh yeah, that guy, you know, like more like a hippie guy or something, you know? So, but just to see that all in person and, you know, to see Stan Kenton or Duke Ellington walk on the stage, it's just like, wow, it's like, and I saw Louis Armstrong live once too, which was amazing to me. And that's where I developed, and that was maybe 1965 or something like that. But that's where I developed like, boy, he walked on stage and that was the biggest guy I've ever, that's the biggest person I ever saw in my life, you know, walked on the stage, it was like a glow. So I don't think it was the spotlights, I think it was him.
Maybe, yeah. And you saw Earl Hines too, right? Once.
Yeah. That was life-changing. Yeah. That was when I was with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis in the Nice Festival, I believe 1977. and Earl Hines played, just another normal set for him, G for 2. And it was so free. He played the bottom of the piano, the top. He looked over here. Oh, look, over here. And I just said, that's freedom. I mean, I was listening. I think I'd heard Cecil Taylor in that summer too. And I just said, this is really free. Like Earl Hines is just doing whatever. And then, so I'm having a life-changing experience. And then he's bringing on the singer. He's bringing on the next act. Life goes on. And I'm in the audience saying like, I got to get some Earl Hines records, and I did. So,
for sure.
So that sense of improvising, the quality of bringing that, having the confidence in your life to put that in front of an audience is very important.
Yeah, for sure. And bringing back a little bit, because I forgot that question. Because classical music and jazz, sometimes I feel that people put too many barriers between the styles, the genres. And my perspective is like this. It's a matter of accents, somehow.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, Olivier Messiaen, he could, he would hear the bird singing, he would notate that and make it to music, just like Hermeto Pascoal in this kind of. And so how is your relationship with classical music, and how does that contribute to your composing process?
Well, I think the fact that I'm not a good reader. I have to work hard to get notes off a page. So, but I'm a listener like crazy. And so when I was able to listen to classical music, and that was, I think, in my college years for sure, because I had to play it. But I knew if I was going to play a Beethoven sonata, I better listen to somebody good on a record that could play it. And then I would move closer. But if I had to get it all from notes, I mean, it's just like a language. I feel if you had to get a language by reading it first, it's not the way you can play it. I think that's the unnatural thing that I hear. And sometimes, I mean, I hate to say it as an old guy, but I hear that in some jazz pianists making a living as jazz pianists, but who discovered jazz late and maybe had a total classical background and maybe did not listen to classical music even before they learned to read it. I don't know. I don't know about the abilities of people. I don't want to judge people by my own inabilities, but it seems like there's a talent, of course, but it's like when you make it natural, that's the point. I think of like a Mozart, that sounds so natural and it's so hard. I mean, and I encourage people always, I do it very badly, to improvise in any style that they're trying to learn. Improvise a very bad Bach two-part invention. I can do that very badly. But like I mentioned too, something worth doing is worth doing badly. So you learn from that. And, so it was easier for me to imitate 20th century music with dissonance and as those sort of things. But then you realize how controlled that is, whether it's birdsong, like Messiaen, or whether it's Stravinsky's or Ravel. I mean, it's so amazing. But there's the control of those things and how to make that a natural part of the way you're speaking. I think that's, and I was engaged in language thing at University of Rochester too, about speech and music, and that was important to me. That somehow the relationship of the way you speak in music is important, and so that would be the way I would say to approach classical music. Listen to it first, and then see what's speaking to you, and then try to imitate it. And then if you are talented and you have those abilities to read notes at sight, my goodness, if I could sight read, where would I be? You know, I'd be really good.
I see. No, yeah, but I agree with you. And I remember you a lot here because I'm living in Rio. And when I see people playing the music made in Rio, I see the relationship with the way they speak Portuguese.
Absolutely.
I mean, the music that is produced here could not be produced in Belo Horizonte, in Minas Gerais.
Yeah,
nor in the Northeast, because they have their specificities. For instance, Milton Nascimento from Belo Horizonte, his music is much more introspective than the music from Carioca region.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have time anymore. I would love to listen your modal stories. Remember the way you used to teach modal, all the modes?
Yeah, the modal show.
Yeah, the modal show. And do you remember the Mysteriankles?
The which one?
Mysteriankles, the band.
Oh yeah,
the JPW band.
Yeah, Harold.
Yeah.
And the arrhythmic man. I remember. I don't know if you saw
Yeah.
the arrhythmic.
Yeah, yeah.
Some students, that's what they remember. Like, I saw somebody after 20 years, they said, "Can you do the arrhythmic man again?" I don't know. That's what you remember.
Yeah, but gotta remember something, right?
That's what. Yeah, it's good that they remember.
Yes, for sure. But Harold, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this.
Yes, you are my opening star to my podcast. And I'm really glad that people will have access to this, because the things you say are very, very precious things to students, professionals, and to those who love music. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I wish you the best of luck with this podcast. Hope to see it.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon in Brazil.
Yeah. Okay.
Please let me know if you come.
Okay, I will.
Thank you so much, Harold. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.